A scientist finds something strange in an iceberg and is astounded by what it really is. This creature was discovered by Mark, an amateur explorer and scientist, but for how long it had been frozen in the ice, only God knows. He was excited to break it out of its frozen prison because he realized it may be the greatest find of his life. However, Mark is taken aback by the scope of his discovery as he breaks through the ice wall and discovers what he's up against. All bets are off after this. After Mark made his astounding discovery, he felt compelled to share it with the world. Mark rests a hand on the cold surface of the wall. "I have returned to bring you good news." "Yes, I did, like I promised." Almost like he's falling in love, he says. He can make out a huge, humanoid-looking creature behind the ice. However, you can scarcely discern its form. However, Mark felt that was plenty. He'd recruited locals from the nearby settlement to break through the ice barrier and see what may turn out to be his life's work. After gently chipping away at the ice for a while, the team is eventually able to get a glimpse of what they're up against. The employees recoil in unison at the news. Some of them are even returning to the cave's original entrance. Mark just kneels down. Astonished, she murmured, "How on earth could this happen?" What, however, did Mark find in the ice, exactly? Where did he ever hear about this ice cavern, and was it possible that this was a discovery that nobody needed? There may be great things to be uncovered now that ice that has been frozen for a century or more has been melting at an alarming pace during the last few of decades. Or things that are best off undisturbed. The world's explorers are poised and ready to seize these openings for the chance to write their names into the annals of history. Most of these explorers meet with spectacular failure, but Mark, a physicist in his 30s, is unlike most explorers, as his most recent endeavor demonstrated. The next leg of his voyage will take him to northern Greenland. Uncharted territory that has been unreachable up until now. But things have altered lately as a result of climate change, and Mark intends to take full advantage of the situation. And he put it to use when he made the big discovery. Mark sets off on his trip, hoping to unearth something preserved in a moment of time under the thawing ice. He has just the essentials for this trip, so the first 2 weeks are very challenging. However, he is certain that the effort will be worthwhile in the long run. We all know how challenging those first few weeks can be. Mark has just the necessities for survival and none of his home comforts with him, but he is determined to discover something that would make the journey worthwhile. He had been out on the trail for hours. Any kind of civilization is at least 2 days away, but suddenly he finds something that could be just what he needs. Mark's mood declines as the weeks pass. A shortage of resources has him second-guessing his every decision. He musters up his last bit of strength and keeps on hiking out. He keeps looking, as if his life depended on it, and he may be looking for anything, a peculiar shadow, an odd pebble, or even a break in the ice. Then he sees it for the first time. He sees it across the vast ice-covered plain. It seems like a rock formation of some kind. And that's better than nothing. He walks in that direction. We've reached the end. That was his final chance. A lack of energy has worn him down. The materials he needs are quickly depleting. And with that, he has no choice but to return to the modern world. Is there any chance that this may really work out? The closer he comes, the more he realizes that it is a rock structure, but there is more. A wind is blowing through the cracks in the rocks. It's interesting to learn more about something so out of the ordinary. Is a cave possible? A passageway, maybe, or a tunnel? It's up to you to find out. Mark, overcome with enthusiasm, tries to push the rock out of the path. In the end, he succeeds, albeit it takes him a while. There is unquestionably a chasm beyond the rock, but nobody knows where it goes. The question is, what did he discover? Is it better for him to enter alone or wait till help arrives? Mark is a seasoned adventurer who recognizes the folly of venturing out on his own. Given that nobody has any specific information on his whereabouts or activities, this is especially true. There has been no internet or phone service for the last 2 days. Going in at this time would be very reckless. Mark, using his reasoning mind, realizes he must return to the neighboring settlement immediately. It's a minimum of 2 days of hiking. As he came closer, he'd likely reconnect with his mobile phone and the internet. Perhaps he might get some aid by calling someone to come back. Would he be able to locate this opening again, though? After some thought, he decides. Mark's curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to take a quick peek into the hole. In other words, he won't go too far. And you can bet he'll use extreme caution. Because he's an experienced traveler, of course. Things should be well for him. The hole has a steep slant, so he moves forward carefully. But what he discovered took him by surprise. There will soon be a tube emerging from the hole. It's tight and awkward to go through here. He needs to watch his every move. Mark is concerned that rocks above him may become dislodged and fall on him at any moment, although this seems less probable the farther he descends. Everything is frozen solid, after all. The good news is that things will soon improve. As he continues to descend, the tunnel expands to accommodate his growing size. It's late and chilly outside. Mark hasn't yet realized how low he's sunk. His curiosity had finally gotten the better of him. The doorway seems much smaller when seen from behind. A glimmer of hope among the shadows. The expanding tunnel abruptly widens into a vast cavern. Mark can't contain his enthusiasm. It's possible he'll be the first human to set eyes on this grotto. As he explores farther, he realizes the cave is much larger than he had anticipated. This, despite his knowledge that he should leave and return, warrants more investigation. Nothing except frozen rock and ice for hours of exploration. This is going to change, though. Mark keeps wandering about in an attempt to locate the door. To be doing this task alone is quite risky. In his head, he is aware of this, but his heart urges him to keep going. After all, there is always a chance of failure. So he keeps going, and soon his hard work will pay off in a huge way. Only then does Mark notice a peculiarity in the ice wall. They looked incredibly blue and white due to the layers of ice around him. This ice barrier, however, is unique. Something lurks in the shadows behind it. This is obviously not a normal rock. Something about this seemed wrong, and he needed answers. He approaches the ice wall and shines a spotlight on it. There's something in this, for sure, but what exactly is it? He shines the light over the shadowy figure, searching for any distinguishing features that would help him identify it. To no avail, however. It's time for him to take a new approach. Lucky for him, he seems to have everything he needs. Mark searches through his few supplies, finds a tiny pickaxe, and starts chipping away at the ice. It's too substantial, unfortunately. It takes him a long time to consider quitting up, but the few gains he's achieved make it seem pointless. He'll likely perish from the cold before he finds anything. He has refused to budge all day. Certainly, he has acted in some dubious ways. After all, he is hidden away in a cave under the Earth's surface, and no one knows he is here except for himself. This level of risk is unprecedented. Return to safety and seek aid at once. This is not a finding he can make by himself. Being rational, we should end the night now. He takes out a sheet of paper and starts drawing a rough map of the cave before he leaves. This location is important to him, and he wants to make sure he can return to it easily. When he finishes, only then does he return to the cave's opening. And he was gone for good, although temporarily. Something was in this space, and he had to figure out what it was. Finding his way back to the tunnel wasn't too difficult. Mark has more resistance when climbing upward, but he succeeds. After he finally makes it back to the surface, it will be nighttime. Sooner rather than later, he must establish his tent or perish from the cold. While he puts it to use, he prepares preparations for the next day. Now he must go to work. He gets ready for bed, having thought out his strategy. He plans to return to the neighboring town. A 2-day trek is required. There, he'll start rounding up volunteers to assist him in breaking the ice barrier. It would be pointless to inform his friends since they would only be nosy. Try to claim the accolades for yourself. He'd want to make this discovery on his own. Back in the hamlet, the trip was lengthy and arduous. There was a chill in the air as snowflakes began to fall. Mark ignored the fact that he was in imminent risk of hypothermia. He cared more about recalling the route back to the cave. It was at this time when nothing else mattered. Mark keeps having nightmares about the shadowy figure. Exactly what may it be? Can we finally celebrate the discovery of a brand new species? A product of ancient human ingenuity? A chuckle escapes his lips as he mulls over the possibility of Bigfoot, but he knows it's ridiculous. Mark may get very little shut-eye, but he is always ready to go at the first sign of daylight. He had marked his position on a downloadable digital map, but it was too zoomed out to be useful. Also, he was worried that if he placed a flag or other visible marker near the cave, someone else might locate it and steal his treasure. No one else could have made that discovery except him. For this reason, on the way back he was trying all in his power to recall the precise place. He had memorized the position of key landmarks, which allowed him to find the cave again with ease. A return to the cave was his first priority, and he was prepared to take whatever steps were necessary to get there. Because this may fundamentally alter his life, no one would try to stop him. Mark imagined that he was already a renowned actor. Mark immediately finds a group of men in town who are eager to assist him in exchange for payment. He doesn't give them many details beyond the fact that he needs their assistance excavating something out of the ice, but they get the impression that it's something important. The locals will do just about anything for cash. Is he going to be in over his head for bending the truth? Fortunately, the locals are more concerned with earning a profit than they are with asking questions. The remainder of the day was spent making arrangements for the return trip. They guaranteed that they have all the required tools on hand. Mark was psyched by the enthusiastic reaction from the people. He plans to shortly take credit for the finding. They are provided with food, equipment, and snow scooters that can move them about. Mark's finances are quickly depleting between this and paying the assistants, but he is ready to go into debt if necessary to achieve this discovery. In the end, do you think it was worth it? Simply put, he believes this will eternally establish his legacy. He knew this was his chance at stardom. He had always hoped he would become renowned for a discovery he would make. The next day, they try to go back to the precise site, but it proves to be much more difficult than Mark had anticipated. What were the odds of their locating the cave once more? Mark marked the location of the cave on the map, so now they can simply return there. However, most of the region is now inaccessible due to the snowfall that has been going on for the better part of a day. They couldn't seem to locate the door's entry. Mark became further distraught. How could this have happened? The hunt for the cave is made much more difficult since most of the markers that Mark had sought to recall had been obscured. The residents of the town have been at it for hours, and they are almost ready to give up and go back. Mark was frustrated because he couldn't accept the fact that they were leaving. The only way for him to find his answer was with their assistance. One of the workers who pokes the earth with a stick feels it abruptly shoot through the ground and falls to the ground, so it doesn't even reach that far. He thrusts the stick directly into the icy opening. Is this the door Mark discovered the day before? We must be at the right spot. As they descend, Mark's heart starts to race. We've reached the end. For the previous several hours, this was all he could focus on. They hurry down the shaft. Mark did not want anybody to be wounded, so they still had to be cautious on the way down. Mark was about to make his breakthrough. Mark's recollection of the large cave is confirmed upon his return. He almost runs back to the cave to get his frozen loot, and he does it within a matter of minutes. Now you can see the massive wall with the shadow inside it. No one could prevent him from becoming famous today. Start cranking away. It's just how Mark recalled it being. The townsfolk don't know what to make of what they're seeing. To their surprise, Mark had not mentioned that they would need to go digging for this. Mark momentarily questioned whether or not the locals would be willing to assist him. The eldest then volunteered to go first. The aid workers are getting pumped up now. Weren't they about to see or take part in something really monumental? They are rushing to work, but are taking all necessary precautions. They are very cautious about doing anything that may potentially harm the discovery. They began to make wild assumptions, since anything at all seemed possible. Even yet, they were surprised to discover this. If at all feasible, it must be in pristine shape for their use. It takes a very long time due to the thickness of the ice cover and the extreme caution with which they must navigate it. They doubted if they had packed all they would need. And then all of a sudden, a forceful blow from one of the employees causes the whole crew to pause their work. The cave is filled with rumbles at this instant. Large fissures are forming where the worker made contact with the ice, and they are rapidly spreading outwards. Mark's pulse sped up for a moment, but he quickly realized something was wrong. In response, the aid workers all take a few steps back, and some even begin sprinting back towards the cave entrance. Still, Mark can't move a muscle. Even though his survival instincts are screaming at him to run away, he cannot possibly turn his back on what may be the defining moment of his life. We may be at the end here. The ice wall they've been chipping away at for the last hour collapses in a shower of shards, revealing what was concealed behind it for decades, if not millennia. Mark is shocked by what he sees. Is this really the case? He knelt down and prayed. Something like this was completely unexpected. There is nothing but a stone wall beyond the ice barrier. Yet another humanoid-like monster, this one drawn on a stone wall and possibly very old. Mark was very dissatisfied. The discovery was still fantastic, but it was nothing like he had hoped. He was able to make out the shadow against the transparent ice since it was painted so thickly and darkly. After the ice melted, additional wall art became visible. Mark compares them to paintings from prehistoric times. Did cave people use this area as a home? The artwork on the wall depicts what seemed to be hunting scenes, people, and fire. Mark was anticipating finding the skeleton of a previously unknown monster, but these sketches could be more important. It was still an incredible discovery, therefore he wanted to get the word out as soon as possible. It provided evidence of human habitation and opened the possibility that specialists may date the drawings. Mark is aware that he must now alert his colleagues and the press. There have been many remarkable discoveries made in the region, but this one may rank among the best ever unearthed by one person. Over the following several months, a slew of specialists paid Mark's newly found ice cave a visit, and the area was swiftly proclaimed protected so that no one could enter without authorization. Though it took a lot of time, money, and work, Mark was quite pleased of the end result. But now his name will be written in the annals of time. Mark was given all the credit for the finding, and his name would go down in history as one of the first to do so. It was and is the pinnacle of his scientific career. Perhaps he did not benefit monetarily from the breakthrough, but he was more concerned with receiving recognition for his efforts.